यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिं विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगं सर्वम् यद्भूतं यच्च भव्यम् उतामृतत्वस्येषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतं दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहा भवात् पुनः ततो विश्वं व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इध्मः शरद्धभिः सप्तास्यासन् परिधजः त्रिः सप्त समिधः कृताः देवागद्यज्ञन्तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषं पशुम् तं यज्ञं बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषं जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्चजे तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतं वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागश्चक्रे वायम्यान् आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्चजे तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावोह जज्ञिरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावजः यत्पुरुषं व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखं किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य जद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागुं शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजागत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णोद्यौः समवर्तत पद्भ्यां भूभिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतं पुरुषं महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णं तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवं विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमयजन्त देवाः तानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकम् महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः अद्यः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टापि दधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसः परस्तात् तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनाम् पदमिच्छन्ति वेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानाम् पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मणे रुचम् ब्राह्मम् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवम् ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनौ व्यात्तम् इष्टम् मनिषाण अमुम् मनिषाण सर्वम् मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
Namaste. Start with a prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are looking into verse number 9 in this sequence. In some of the popular sequences, it is a different number, but the way Swami Maheshananji is taking it, this is number 9. Tan yagyan barhishi praukshanna purushan jatamaggrataha tena deva ayajanta sadhya rishayaschaye. So, as a very quick revision from last time, just for continuity's sake, what we saw was that the whole life that we lead should be seen as a yajna, as a sacrificial process. This is what the yajna means. So it's a sacrificial vidhi. It's a process. So in this yajna, as we saw, there are two different kinds of sacrificial angas. Two kinds of aspects of what is sacrificed. What is sacrificed are one of two types. So one is called a pradhana anga, and one is called gauna anga. So pradhana anga means the main sacrificial aspect, the main thing that needs to be sacrificed, the main vastu, the main aspect of something that needs to be sacrificed. And gauna means secondary aspects of what needs to be sacrificed. So as we saw last week, and I think maybe the week before that also, the sacrifice can be reasonably successful if the gauna is used as a sacrifice. The secondary aspect is used as a sacrifice. But not all is lost. It may not be very complete, but it is not completely lost. But if the sacrifice has to be completely successful, then the main bali, the main anga, the main aspect has to be sacrificed. Without that, everything else is really not that useful. It may be there, it may not be there, but if the main sacrifice is not done, then it remains unfulfilled, would be the way to look at it. So our life becomes unfulfilled. And so we look at it, translate that to our experiences, our lives, and so on. What we are doing is we are sacrificing some smaller things in our life. So anytime we have a disciplined life, like for example, just recently I found out that my sugar level is higher than it has been. And now I have to sacrifice, be much more disciplined about not really even because, sometimes I just accept some sweets after dinner or something, especially if you're going out, and sometimes even at home. And I have to now give that up. I should give that up, and I have been giving it up. So this is a smaller sacrifice in order to improve my health and my longevity. Similarly, we sacrifice a lot of things, and we become more disciplined and so on. So this is a sacrifice of the gauna anga. So here it's not as though I am completely gaining moksha by not eating sweets, but my life will become hopefully more healthy by not eating sweets, because I have a tendency for being diabetic. So I can sacrifice some things in order to gain preparedness for a longer life. If on the other hand, I am not touching the main sacrifice, which we will now discuss, then I have not made my life very successful. Then I have not reached, because that is the purpose of the yajna. The purpose of the yajna is to fulfill the promise of living. This is the yajna. And it is prescribed, it has to be understood. It is not prescribed as a vidhi, like it is in the Vedic rituals, because the Vedic rituals only deal with secondary angas, gauna anga only. And some sacrifice that you do in the temple with the help of the pujari is more effective than doing it yourself. So no doubt about it. So much so that if you really do a good job of it, then your next life is definitely going to be better. No question about that. But even so, doing this yajna in the temple, like for example, we have mahayajnas. We do chanting of the Rudram, 11,000 times with lots of people, as we have done in the Livermore temple recently, and it is done all the time. Not all the time, but it is done from time to time. So those they give you a lot of very positive results. but they do not deliver the main result of gaining freedom, which is the real goal of our life. We continue to be dependent on a lot of different things and so on. So if you remember the story that I gave you that Swami Chinmayananji had given us, and I recited it for you, there was a very learned Pandit, and not only a Pandit, but he was a man of the world who was a Renaissance man who was going on a boat to the other side, and he was an accomplished person, made a lot of progress in his life, very dedicated, had made a lot of sacrifices, Gauna sacrifices, Gauna Bali. This is called Bali. Bali means a sacrifice. So he had done a lot of Gauna Bali. But in that example, only in that example, you cannot generalize it, although we will apply it to our life in a second. But in that example, he did not sacrifice the one thing that was necessary for him to save his life. And you know what that sacrifice is? We'll think about that example. What did he not sacrifice? What he'd failed to sacrifice was the boat. The boat is the thing that he had to sacrifice. In that example. In our example, it'll be even more drastic than that. In a minute, I'll tell you. But in that example, the main sacrifice that he should have done is to abandon the boat and survive, because he knew how to survive without a boat. So a person who knows how to swim doesn't need a boat. But this learned person needed the boat to survive. And so when he was unable to abandon the boat and survive, he could not survive. So this is the example. So you've got to abandon something which is holding you back. You are dependent on it. Okay? So now we move the discussion to a next level, which I had already talked about in the last class. I'm still revising, really, by the way. The new information is not there yet. So it is said that each one of us are really two people in one. They're two in one. Okay? So one is called Maithunat Purushaha. Mithuna means a mixture, connection. So Maithunat here means the physical act of love by our parents. The sexual union of our parents has generated the Maithunat Purusha. So each one of us is born out of that act, and as a result, the constituents of that act, sexual act, is now flowering in the form of this Purusha, a little baby. And more nutrients are given, and pretty soon it becomes a full-fledged person. And a full-fledged person means one who has hopefully a healthy body with hands and legs and eyes and so on and so forth, mind, hardware and software, ready to transact with the world. This is called Purusha, Maithunat Purusha. Okay, so this is number one. There is a second Purusha that is also us. We are both the Purusha. this Purusha is called Yajnat Purusha. So it is born. It is kind of born. It is already there, but not apparent to us. So from the standpoint of not being apparent to us ourselves, it is called a birth of some kind. It's not a real birth. Why not? Because it is already what it has already been there. It is the swarupa of the human being, as we will see. So, but anyway, from the standpoint of this, from the standpoint of the aspect of the birth thing, there are two people that are born. And so here, this is given in a lot of different Upanishads also. In the Mundaka Upanishad, it is specifically mentioned as Dvau Suparno. There are two birds sitting on the same tree. One bird is tasting the fruits of the tree, sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter, but very involved in picking out fruits, eating them, sharing it with others, giving it to the children, and totally involved in the act of bhoga. This is one bird. The second bird is simply watching the first bird, quietly watching, not really participating in any action, not desirous of any phalam, any fruits, totally satisfied and gazing quietly at what is happening. Now, this is an allegory. In the explanation with Adi Shankara has also given, and many others also have given, they are really the same person. Same person with two personalities. And so really speaking, this will be hopefully discussed at some more other time. This is the Jivatma. Jivatma means a person who is engaged in action and the results of the action, and Paramatma. All in the same locus. So there are two kinds of Purushas. There is a Jivatma Purusha and a Paramatma Purusha. So Jivatma Purusha is the Maithunat Purusha, and Paramatma is the Yajnat Purusha. And the Yajnat Purusha, which has not yet apparent to me, but it is through Yajna it will become apparent as we will proceed. If this looks kind of hard to believe, difficult to understand, don't let it be that difficult. Why not? This is our daily experience. How, as a dreamer, which lasts for quite a while, if you sleep for, let's say, 8 hours a night, which most of us don't, we sleep less than that. Some people do more than that, it doesn't matter. A majority of that is when you are as a dreamer. And you are the dreamer. This is the one person. And the same person now gets out of the dream into a waking world. So you are the dreamer, you are the waker. There are two people. And so this is exactly what the yajna is all about. So in this manner, what we need to do, now we can start to proceed further with new information. What we need to do is to offer the Maithunat Purusha the Jivatma as the sacrifice. This is what needs to be done. This needs to be sacrificed. In the application of that example that I spoke about crossing the boat, what it means is this. So clearly see this. I am traveling through the life in a boat consisting of the body-mind physiological complex. This is what it is. There is a difference. There is a big difference between the example and exemplified. In the example, the person is sitting on a boat, even though he's very vulnerable, because if there is a raft broken and he cannot swim, he's done for. But nevertheless, until then, he's quietly sitting on a boat. He doesn't think he is the boat. In our life, the fact of the matter is we are sitting on a boat, and there is an additional confusion called Brahma in Shastra, in Sanskrit. Brahma. Brahma, you know what that Brahma is? You know by now, but you should guess it. The Brahma is not that I am sitting on this boat of the body-mind, but I am the boat itself. This is the Brahma. And this Brahma is very difficult for me to cross. I don't believe this. How is that possible? But this is the truth. So in the process of abandoning and the process of giving the main bali, so now understand this very clearly. The main bali that I have to do, which will enable me to achieve the result of my life that I am seeking, is to give up, abandon the connection with this body-mind complex. Jump out of it. And jump into the ocean of consciousness, if you may. Chit Swarupaha. Jump out of it. I don't know how to do it, because there are so many steps involved. The first step that I have to do is I have to understand that this is in fact a boat that I am traveling in. I am not the boat itself. That itself is a major thing. But we have to do it. We have to understand. This is the Brahma. Then once I understand that my taking refuge in this body-mind complex, which is the Maithunat Purusha, that it is possible to survive without sitting on that boat. See what I'm saying? First step is to remove the misunderstanding that I am the boat. This is why many times in the Vedantic meditation, and very popular and amongst non-Vedantic meditation also, you are supposed to practice that you are the Sakshi of this body. All the Mahatmas, this is just the beginning. This is not an advanced meditation. That will come much later on. But the first few steps are that you practice looking at the body, your own body, feeling it. and to see that you are the seer. So this is the Drik Drishya Viveka. Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik Tat Diktu Manasam. Then from Manasa becomes Chit. So this is the process of looking at the body and understanding its introduction that I am not the boat, I am sitting in the boat. Yes, through prarabdha karma, I have a very important connection with this body-mind which Ishvara and I have jointly created for this life. This is what I wanted to do. Ishvara said, Tathastu, you have it. You have this body. And during that time, I have to just see this is what I am connected to. So the first step is to see that I am not the body, but I am sitting on the body. I am associated with it. As the body is traveling through the ocean of samsara, I am also traveling with it. But the next step is I must know how to jump out of this boat. And the way to jump out of the boat is to sacrifice it. Sacrifice means what? Sacrifice doesn't mean that you burn it, physically burn it. You don't need to. You don't need to do that. Why create unnecessary burning problems for yourself when you're not sure who you are and so on? You'll also be destroyed along with it. You'll have to create another life. But this sacrifice means that very clearly you see that you are another person. You don't need the body-mind complex. This is what the promise of Purusha Suktam is. This is the promise of Vedanta. This is not the promise of the Vidhi in a temple. You don't sacrifice the main Yajamana. The Yajamana stays there and all the results are given to the Yajamana because of the sacrificial fire. This is much bigger. This means that the sacrificial fire, Barhishi Praukshanna, as we will see, means that the primary obstacle to your immortality is the dependence on the body-mind complex. You have to abandon it. You have to jump out of the boat, so to speak. That's the real lesson of that beautiful example that Swami Chinmayananji had given. I thought I'd make that connection and I didn't have time to do so in the last class. Okay. So that is the case. The next thing to see is, so to summarize, there are two kinds of yajamanas. Both are me. One is Maithunat yajamana, the other one is Yagyat yajamana. And Yagyat yajamana is practically the same as Paramatma. Means that all the qualities of Paramatma are really me. I just don't appreciate it, as we will see. So this is the first thing that we've done. Okay? Now, the second thing is, there are two kinds of Agnis also. So Barhishi means in the fire. Barhi means fire. And here the fire in the understanding of the sacrificial yajnas, there are many kinds of fires, different shapes, different qualities, and all of them have to be And people who really know this know exactly what kind of a fire is active at any one time. Here the fire is Barhishi. So here Swami Maheshananji has said that the word Barhishi comes from Brahma. From Briha. So Briha is the same dhatu that creates Brahma, means big, unlimited. So this we have to now understand. So first we saw the two kinds of Yajamanas, and now we are looking at two kinds of Agnis. Okay? So it turns out that the human being, which is the Maithunat Purusha, is usually performing yajna in the Bahya Agni, outside Agni. And I'll explain that in a minute. Outside Agni. What needs to be done in order to become Yajnat Purusha is to sacrifice the outside person and discover a Brahma Rupa Agni, which is my core Agni. And I have both the types of Agnis. Agni means fire. I have both types of fire. So the outside fire is creating problems for me. It's really burning me. How is it burning me? Because of invariable disappointments in my life. I do things and I expect some results. The results don't come. And I have to keep going in some new ways. And so this is a disappointment. Sometimes even the acharyas say that even when I have some pleasure, the pleasure also binds me because I find, I think I found the seed of being happy in my life. Problems. I cannot find a real seed. It looks like a real seed of finding happiness, but time and time again I am getting disappointed in one thing or the other. And so this is burning me in that sense. The internal fire is quiet. Effortlessly it is keeping me alive. In fact, this is the fire which is given to you by Ishvara, by Paramatma. Is given to you in the form of prana, the life, in the form of aushadhi, good food, digestion, and it keeps the body warm and living quietly there in the body. And also Jatara Agni. This is the Agni that it has to be flared up if it needed to be in order to digest the food. This is why the inside Agni, Brahmarupam Agni, it doesn't take any your propensity into it, just ignores it. So for example, now there is a new fashion that you don't eat cooked food, you only eat raw food. This is something new. It happens all the time, but nowadays it is very much in fashion. Cooking food is not good. I just want raw food. You know, you're making things even harder for Jatara Agni. And inside the Agni says, oh, here we come again. This has not been digested well. I better do a better job of heating it up. The internal heat has to be there. And so this internal heat in the fire, which is in the form of a fire, is what I need to discover. And this discovery is only possible when I turn my attention and be aware of the internal warmth and the internal happiness. So this is what I need to do in order to avoid burning in the outside fire and bask in the warmth of the inside fire. What I need to do is to first be aware of it. If I can't even do it, if I don't know what this is all about. But if that assurance is given to me, then the next step is to resort to it. And so here, for example, before I do that, so to summarize, the outside Agni is basically dukkha rupam. It may have some portions of sukham, of peace and happiness, but mostly it is dukkham, dukkham, dukkham. This is the outside Agni. The natural Agni, my own Agni, is sukha rupam. So this has to be kept in mind. So this is what is called the Manushyasya Agni Rupata. Manushyasya Agni Rupata, meaning that I am continuously sacrificing things to the outside Agni, but it is not getting me anywhere. I have to burn my entire personality, my whole person, offer it again to Ishvara in order to enjoy the inside. And so here, for example, Swami Maheshananji has pointed out in the Mandukya Upanishad, for example, it gives, Shruti says, Adrishyam, Avyavaharyam, Prapancha Upashamam, Shantam, Shivam Advaitam. So this is the verse number 7 in the Mandukya Upanishad that we just took in the morning class. Many of you are doing that. So that example is given here by Swami Maheshananji. So he says, the internal Agni is adrishyam. Adrishyam means that it is quietly inside of you. And you cannot touch it, you cannot see it. It burns quietly, keeping you alive. Adrishyam. You cannot manipulate it like you can the external Agni, because it has a form. External Agni has a form. Internal Agni has no form. It's formless. Adrishyam. Avyavaharyam. Avyavaharyam means that you cannot transact with that Agni like you can with the external Agni. You can receive the external Agni. You can dispense with it. You can work with it. Internal Agni, the internal fire. So this is all the explanation of the word barhishi. Tam yagyan barhishi praukshan. So may you sprinkle in the fire. Tam yagyam barhishi praukshan means may this yajna be in the form of sprinkling into the fire or giving ahuti in the burning incense into the fire. So this is what we're talking about. So the question is, how do you praukshan barhishi, which is internal? How do you do that? Because you said adrishyam, avyavaharyam. The next word in the Mandukya Upanishad is prapancha upashamam. This is an important word, prapancha upashamam. Prapancha upashamam means by noticing the internal Agni, by not being so involved in the external Agni. So the external Agni is in the form of prapancha. So prapancha means happening, changes, expectations, desires, disappointments, excitements. Those kinds of things is what is called prapancha, whatever which is exhibited in your life externally. Upashamam, just withdrawing from it. And as you withdraw from outside, the internal one automatically becomes visible. Here Swami Maheswaranji has given a very good example. So he said, sometimes let's say you're traveling and you are carrying a suitcase with you. And what you find is that there is no space left in the suitcase. Oftentimes, we start stuffing stuff into the suitcase to go somewhere, long distance, let's say from US to India. And at one time you're not sure, so you say 5 shirts and 5 pants and sweaters and this, that or the other. And then you find some of the important stuff that yet needs to be carried. There's no space for it because you've now stuffed everything else into the suitcase. So putting stuff into the suitcase is like prapancha. So imagine yourself to be a suitcase. And now you've filled it up with a lot of trivial things that are not necessary to be there. And when you come down to really understanding what my reality is, what really drives me in my life and so on, what do you need to do? All you need to do, as is in the case of this suitcase, is take things out. You do not create a space by putting space into the suitcase. The space is already there. If you take out stuff, what remains is some very pleasant space that you can now use to put your important papers, your medicines, which that are crucial for you to take. But if there's no space, you cannot carry them. Beautiful example. So prapancha upashamam means it's not as though you have to discover the fire. The fire is already there, but you are never paying attention to it. So how do I pay attention to it? By paying less attention. Just take out, abandon. So this is the sacrificial act. Abandon your what is called asakti. That asakti is used means a very intense relationship with things outside is called asakti. And so what it means is, so you can tell someone, okay, do you want to discover Ishvara in yourself? He says, yes. We all do that. We pray, oh Bhagwan, please, come stay in my heart. I've been wanting you to do that. And please come, especially in these Navratri days, everybody is in prayerful mood, and you want the light of the Dashasmi, and Diwali and this, that, or the other. And so you're in a very prayerful mood. You're waiting for Ishvara to come stay in your heart. So Ishvara says, okay, I'll stay in your heart, but there's no space. So he said, what do you mean there's no space? Well, you have so much asaktis about various things. Like for example, after retiring, you should really do some morning study and so on and so forth. But I don't have time to doing that. Well, why don't you have any time? Because you retire? No, but I have to play golf. I have to keep myself busy. Okay, so in the morning time, you're not available for me to come sit in your heart. What about later on in the morning? But then I'm busy with lunch. Okay, not lunchtime. Afternoon perhaps? No, but we have this Zoom call with all these friends that I haven't seen for a long time. This is what I find. Honestly, I have friends. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Some of them have a dozen Zoom calls every week. They play bridge by Zoom. They play rummy in Zoom. They play poker in Zoom. Teen patti in Zoom. Honestly, you test somebody about, what about, can you come on Tuesday? No, Tuesday I have this Zoom call with some friends. Okay, so Ishvara says, okay, I cannot come in the afternoon, you have a Zoom call. What about the evening? Well, evening we're very busy with dinner and so on and so forth. Okay, all right. What about after dinner? After that I get so tired, then I have to sort of watch a little bit of television. Ishvara says, you have no space for me. How can I come? So this is what is called prapancha upashamam. So upashamam, so here are the thing, adrishyam, avyavaharyam, prapancha upashamam, shantam shivam advaitam. So let's look at all what is consistent with the internal Agni, not the external Agni. So we saw adrishyam, already there. So adrishyam could be that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to look for it. And avyavaharya means there's no transaction. You just be who you are. Prapancha upashamam. Shantam. So here's the thing. Our nature is Shantam. Shantam means we are by nature peaceful. But we don't discover it. We cannot discover it. Because I think one of the things that happen, lots of reasons why we don't discover it. One of the reasons is that if you are alone, which is the best way to be Shantam, and you're rarely alone. You're rarely alone. There's so much stuff going on in your life. You're married. And the moment you become a little quiet, your spouse says, what's the matter with you? Do you want to talk to me? She says, no, I do want to talk to you. Okay, then talk. Let's do this. Or you've got friends. If there's something or the other, is you don't have any time to just be quiet by yourself. And one of the aspects of that is when you are quiet and by yourself, you become bored. You get bored. So you don't like boredom. You feel kind of like alone and bored and left out. So you crave company. You crave stuffing things into your suitcase, so to speak. And you miss the chance of being. Prapancha upashamam shantam. There is a discovery involved. To be just with yourself. Because what happens is, this is the way I would see it, is that boredom is also an external thing which is sitting on top of you. You haven't really discovered shantam. Because whenever there is no one, you are bored. And this comes from really not understanding the Shastra. Not just having, this is why I feel so good that I've invested my time in understanding, in studying Shastra, studying Sanskritam. And I don't get enough time to really read about myself. It is so joyful. Because it acts as a reflection to myself. Shantam. And that peace that you get, which is devoid of boredom, devoid of unnecessary company, devoid of any wanting to do things from external standpoint. It's so pleasant. It's just amazing. Then the next word, which is the internal Agni, is Shivam. So Shivam means a blessing. Kalyana Rupam. You can even use the word Shantam etc. for Shivam, but really speaking, you find that Shivam is, so as Shanti increases, then Shivatvam also increases. And what is Shivatvam? Shivatvam means Kalyana Drishti, blessingness. And blessing in the form of not expecting anything. So here Swami Vidyaranya uses the word Tripti. Beautiful word, Tripti. Tripti Deepa Prakaranam in the Panchadeepa. Tripti means satisfaction. And Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, there is an external version of Tripti also, which occurs every time you have a nice meal. Because every time there is you eat, there is, in the end of that, there is a Tripti. And this Tripti is in the form of not wanting anything. Because all the other things, like, if you invest in some stock market and you made a ton of money, I was telling you my experience that about a year back, I invested in Tesla. And I think my stock, a small amount, I didn't invest very much, but it went up 80% in a matter of 2 or 3 months. I was so happy. I said, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. I sold it. What a mistake it was. It has since gone up like 2000%. And so that Tripti is not a Tripti, but the Tripti of eating is a Tripti. Tripti means you have Kalyana Rupam Tripti. For a while, you are satiated. I don't want anything more. Your spouse says, yes, you can have another chapati. I said, no, I cannot have any more chapati. I am full. This is called Kalyana Rupam without any expectation. I gave this example to I believe the first morning class, or maybe the second morning class, I forget which one, Swami Maheshananji had given this beautiful example. So he said, the closest thing to a blessing that we have is by a mother towards a young child. Everybody can give you blessing, like for example, if your birthday you get all these. This is what happens. It's such a funny thing if you have these WhatsApp groups in families, and there are like 25-30 people in the WhatsApp group in the families. First person that says happy birthday dear uncle, 29 other also come in with happy birthday dear uncle, happy birthday dear uncle. And it becomes like it's a sense of duty that you have to give happy birthday to, otherwise you'll be missing. People say, how come you didn't give it to me? So there is a Kalyana Rupam blessing given by a lot of people. That's good. And these days I find that even at the normal things, people will say, have a good day today. Hope your rest of the day goes well. It's a kind of like a blessing, good wishes. Out of them, the blessing of a mother towards a smaller child is the best in the whole world. And the reason is that the mother has no expectations from the child. She just loves seeing the child and expects the child be what you are and be healthy. I like to just be smiling. When the child grows up, the blessing of the mother is still there, but it becomes conditional. Then you start feeling, I hope that the son or the daughter support me. I hope they call me. I hope they remember me. It's an expectation. And it is not the same anymore. So therefore, the word Shivam, going back to the word Shivam, is a sense of tripti. It's a Kalyana Rupam. It's a Kalyana Rupam. So now we can summarize it that the Agni that we are mentioning is Brahma Rupam Agni. So in the Brahma Rupam Agni, the Purusha Yajna is given, in the Purusha Yajna, Ahuti is given in the form of giving up all expectations, giving up my sense of wanting my life to be successful. As I mentioned, I think in this class or the last verse, that even if you were to try to go to sleep, if you keep on saying, I hope I go to sleep, I hope I go to sleep, you'll never go to sleep. You trust that sleep will come. And stop asking for it, stop thinking about it. Have the trust that this is going to happen, it will come. So similarly here also, the internal Agni, Barhishi, is the Brahma Rupam Agni, and the Purusha Yajna Ahuti has to be given. Even in Bhagavad Gita it says, Brahmagnau Brahmana Hutam Brahmaiva Eva Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Really this is called Brahma Agni. The Brahma Agni is the internal Agni which is you. It is there already in the sense of Adrishyam, Avyavaharyam, Prapancha Upashamam, Shivam, Advaitam. The last word is Advaitam. Advaitam means that you begin to see the unity in your own expressions. You don't look for unity externally like we are hoping to do, that the conservatives and the liberals in this country unite and become a single entity. It's too much to hope for. Same thing in India. You have, the Hindus and non and seculars. It's not going to happen. People are going to stay divided. But you and I internally can become Advaitam. And how we can get Advaitam? Sense of division which rules my life today, the sense of division is really not helping me at all. It is not necessary. That is because of the external Agni. The internal Agni means that I am the nature of Advaitam. How am I the nature of Advaitam? Because Advaitam means non-duality. So it's the same way that if I am standing in the front of a mirror, or some multiple mirrors, like it happens in many cases, like in restaurants or in gyms where they want to create a larger space by giving lots of different mirrors and so on. And I walk in and there's 40 of me. So just like there is no real differentiation between the real me and all my copies, even though if you can count, I'm 41 of them, but there's only one. So similarly, the Advaitam in my life comes from the understanding that really a sense of differences is mithya. This has to come from study, from doing nididhyasanam, by completely understanding it, vairagya, all kinds of things. But the end point is, which is what is talked about here, is that this is the discovery of the internal Agni. And it is a result of abandoning the support of the Jivatma. I have to sacrifice the Jivatma into the Yajna in order to understand the space that I am already. Take out all the junk, essentially, from my life. What needs to be done? So this is the real Yajna, where the main Bali is the Purusha itself. This is the Maithunat Purusha that has to be given up. And it doesn't have to be given up by physical reasons, but to understand that I am something different from it. I don't need it. And these are exemplified in later steps in the understanding. But in the beginning, I should see what I need to do, what direction that I have to go. So that is the meaning of Tam Bar Yajnam Barhishi Prakshan Purushan Jatam Agrataha. Then we will now move into the second part of the verse. Tena Deva Ayajanta Sadhya Rishayaschaye. And we will look into that in the next class. There are a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up that I didn't get time, but I will do so in the next class. So a little bit of revision of these points that we have gone through today, and then after that we will cover new ground next week. So with that, I close today's class. So let's say a small prayer and let me see if I have any questions. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Okay. So Jaya, you don't need to apologize for me for logging in late. I don't know when you log in, so you can rest assured, and hopefully you were able to catch up with aspect of it. No problems. Nice to see all of you, quite a few people. So just a reminder, I don't know if I need to send out an email that we will not have a class next Tuesday, which is the election day. So we will skip that and we will meet on the 14th of November next time. So we will have a break for 1 week. Just want to remind you of that. Any other questions? I don't see. Yeah, it's interesting. It's the Purusha Suktam can be looked at both ways. Both ways means as a fundamental and important part in the ritualistic aspect of Vedas. As you know, it is chanted in all the important occasions, along with Rudram and Chamakam and a few other important verses and so on. So it forms a very important part of the Vedic rituals that are given in by the various with the various pandits. And it also is Vedantic. Now, it being Vedantic is not generally known. Yeah, because when I was starting to think about teaching this class, I thought, let me just kind of Google it to see what is available and so on. And there may be a lot of good books that I wasn't aware of. But what's available on the net is all having to do with the ritualistic aspect of it. Even the interpretations of the meaning of the verses is all from the standpoint of the Karmakanda. And I was very fortunate really to come across this understanding by Swami Maheshananji, who I consider to be an absolute gem of a teacher, a great Mahatma. And this book, and so I've read this 2 or 3 times in the last 6-7 years. And what I find about it is that it is really the teaching of Vedanta in a different language. In other words, normally you will talk about Drik Drishya Viveka, Atma, and so on and so forth. But the Purusha Suktam's Vedic language is very poetic and very cryptic, like Barhishi Prokshan. And so if you look at the Vedic translations of that, it says sprinkles the water in the, sprinkles the ahuti, not water, but use all the ahuti into the fire. That's it. Here, however, the understanding of the Veda Anga, the Pradhana Anga, the Gauna Anga, the Jivatma, the Paramatma, the body, mind, all of that, to bring that out is something very rare. And so Swami Maheshananji basically says that I find that really Purusha Suktam should be in the Jnana Kanda. You can put it anywhere you want to. But in his understanding and explanation, it is like any other Upanishad. And it's nice to see the Upanishad being articulated in a different way, in the form of our yajna of life. We can relate to it in a different way. Fascinating, just fascinating. And, I find sometimes it would be a great service to humanity if something like this 2-volume book by Swami Maheshananji, which is in Hindi, and I'm very fortunate that my mother tongue is also Hindi, and also very Sanskritized Hindi. So I'm again very fortunate that I have actually studied quite a bit of Sanskrit, and I'm able to understand the Sanskritized Hindi. But it will be a great service if we can translate that into different languages. I just do not have the time. I know what it takes to write books. I did that with Swami Viditatmananda on the Kaivalya Upanishad. Took me 2 years to really carefully do that, and just don't have the time. I have so many other things that I want to do. But hopefully someone will come forward to it and so on. Kalpana says, will we have a class on the 31 and 11/7? Yes. Yeah, those will continue. Saturday classes will continue, but just the Tuesday class of next week will be cancelled. Shanti Kumar writes, hope you get a deserving president. It's all up to Ishvara. He must be playing jokes on us. Whatever happens, it'll be okay. All right, so there's no other questions, and so I would say goodbye to you, and we will see you in 2 weeks from now. Okay? Hari Om.